welcome to Dialogue. This week, residents of Beijing, myself included, woke up to a hazy yellow sky on Monday. It was not pretty. In fact, it turned out to be the worst sandstorm in a decade in northern China. Many are asking why, what deeper environmental issues are at stake, and what more needs to be done to tackle extreme weather events such as this one. To discuss all these issues and more, I'm joined by Ma Jun, Director of the Institute of Public and Environmental Affairs, and in the first half of the program by Dr. Rebecca Naden, Director of the Global Risks and Resilience Program of the Overseas Development Institute, and later on by Wu Changhua, Executive Director of the Professional Association for China's Environment. That is our topic. I'm Wang Guan. Dr. Ma Jun, let me go to you first. A simple question here. What caused the sandstorm? Why was it so bad this time?
Thank you, Wang Guan and Mr. Ma Jun, and happy to join this dialogue. Yes,
great to have you.
The very, very severe sandstorm was caused by two major factors. One is a real strong wind started from the Mongolian plateau. This the so-called Mongolian cyclone. This time is really particularly bad. It's as strong as a very strong typhoon, and we know that we seldom have that strong kind of a wind on the land. And then the second factor is, of course, in the Gobi Desert, there's plenty of source of all this sand and dust in Mongolia, and of course all along this route from so the big cyclone have blown all this sandy dust into the high air, and then from there being carried, transmitted all the way for hundreds of miles, and in different directions, and cast the sand dust. Of course, along with the way, there's also it also pick up the local dust, and so we have seen that this sandstorm, sand and dust storm, affected 12. In the first day, on Monday, affected 12 provinces. Thousands of miles of sandy lines pushing all the way, pressing all the way southward, eastward.
Yeah, it was really bad. It was really ugly. In fact, many are asking this question: will the sandstorm make a comeback, or are we done with it yet? Because yesterday it cleared up in Beijing, but today, Wednesday, it is smoggy once again.
Yeah, unfortunately, the sandstorm, has actually part of that have flown back because the wind have turned southward, and the wind from the south have again blowing all this floating fine dust back into Beijing, and the wind is also coming from the eastern direction. So a lot of sand, the remaining part of the sandstorm, have been blown mostly westward. So we have seen that at this moment, many western provinces and regions it's still, the local air quality is still beyond index. And in Beijing, we're going to have to wait another 2 days after a light rainfall and strong wind from the north, that we can again have blue sky in Beijing.
Wow, hopefully it will come sooner rather than later. Dr. Naden, what do you make of all this? I mean, do you have anything to add from your perspective? Why was it so bad this time?
Thank you, and thank you very much for inviting me on the program. I think it's important when we think about sandstorms, that these are a combination, as we've just heard, of meteorological factors, but they can be, the intensity of them and the severity of them can be influenced by other environmental factors. So we know that in Mongolia recently there's been quite severe drought in some areas. So what can happen is that areas that have not had much snow or rain can then make the situation much more as the cyclone, typhoon level winds pick up all of that soil, and then also potentially combined with industrial pollutants that might already be in the atmosphere, and this can also contribute to make them more severe.
And in your opinion, do you think this round of sandstorm that is hitting Mongolia and a dozen provinces in China, a man-made disaster or more of a natural occurrence?
Well, I mean, I'm not actually a meteorologist or a climate scientist, but I think actually it's these are natural phenomena, and we know that springtime is traditionally when we might start to see the sandstorms. But I think what we've seen with this one is that it's occurred a little bit earlier, and also the intensity of it has been more severe than we've seen, as you said at the start of the program, the worst in a decade. So I think when we're talking about these sort of extreme weather events, we need to be looking about issues related to climate change, but also issues related to environmental degradation as well. And these things are always a combination of multiple factors.
Right. Director Ma, let me go back to you. Some experts say that China is entering into a new active period of sandstorms. Do you think that is the case? To what extent do you think the Green Great Wall that China has been trying to build will hopefully mitigate the effect of future sandstorms?
Yeah, in China, we have noticed that since the 1960s, the frequency of strong sandstorm is actually dropping, and but of course, I mean, we had that 20 years ago. We had that another very big one in 2010. 11 years ago, and this time people against saying that we have noticed that the frequency picked up to some extent. So whether this is just a short just occasional phenomena, or it represents a long-term trend, we need to have more meteorological, observation of that. Having said that, I think what Dr. Needham just mentioned is also very, very important. We need to recognize that globally, the temperature, global temperature is rising, and also it rises faster, more rapidly in the higher altitude, in the northern, far north area. So this time, the northern part of China and the bordering area in Mongolia Republic also warmed up earlier than usual. That may thwart the ice and snow cover and expose more sand and dust. So if this represents a long-term trend of global warming, then we probably might really face a real possibility of more sandstorm challenges.
That is an alarming trend over there. And then China's skies have cleared up in the past few years. You and I live in Beijing for quite a while, can easily notice that. Its PM 2.5 pollutant level has been dropping for many years. But there are concerns that this winter, and especially since the Lunar New Year, air pollution may be coming back. How would you respond to these concerns that are widely held by many residents here in Beijing?
Yeah, first we need to recognize ever since 2013, after China launched the unprecedented, massive clean air action plan, the air quality have been improved in Beijing and in the surrounding regions. And the PM 2.5 concentration level have dropped from nearly 90 micrograms to 38 last year. That was remarkable. Having said that, ever since 2018, the winter season, that year, we started noticing a rebound of some of the very pollution and energy intensive industries in this region. And last year, our crude steel output in China for the first time topped 1 billion tons. The whole world put together produced 1.8 billion tons. So you can imagine, wow. 60% of the global total. And most of that, the most highest concentration is in the regions surrounding Beijing. So this rebound have definitely gonna cause some rising, emission, and which offset some of the efforts we have made. And so whenever we suffered from a unfavorable weather conditions, like this year, 5 days continuous of south wind, and which carried all the dust of Hubei Plain, not just to Beijing, but even to the more northern areas like Zhangjiakou and Chengde. So that was quite unusual. So there are obviously weather factors here, but we need to really pay attention to the that we haven't really fulfilled our mission to transform the energy and our industrial structure.
Indeed, those are very worrying things. As residents of Beijing, as Chinese citizens, those are very worrying things indeed. Dr. Nathan, from your perspective, how would you rate China's fight against pollution over the years?
Yes, actually, I also was a long-term resident of Beijing from the early 2000s to about 2016. And, like many residents, noticed, challenges, but then, a huge efforts by the government to try and rectify those problems, focusing on those polluting industries, moving them out of the city, also moving much more towards clean energy, renewable energy. And that's something I think we saw in the 14th five-year plan. There is a huge focus by the government to address that. And of course, addressing air pollution also is critically important for addressing climate change and vice versa. But as Madeleine says, there is still a lot of work to be done, but things are moving in the right direction, I think.
What are those things that you think that remains to be done that need to be addressed urgently?
Well, I think one side is on the on the pollution reduction side in terms of the type of energy mix. But also, I think it is important that there needs to also to be a focus on implementing sort of more sustainable cities. That we need to have a strong focus on ensuring that the cities that are created are sustainable in terms of the environment and also people's livelihoods. And that means ensuring that we not just think about reducing energy intensity from pollution from those energy companies, but also about our transport networks. How do people work? Where do they live? Can they live and work close to where they live and work, so that they don't have to have long commutes and so on and so forth. So I think it's thinking about the environment and our ecosystem in a holistic way. So we need to look at mitigation measures, reducing emissions, but we also need to think about how people live and work in the environment and how man and nature can exist together.
We do need a holistic approach. Director Ma, let me go back to you. South China Morning Post reported that in an article in March saying that some of China's steel mills, for example, are cooking the book, fabricating numbers. When they're using, their full production in the books, they're not saying so in order to evade inspectors from Beijing. Do you think those phenomena are commonplace in China?
Yep. We need to recognize that China, over the past 7-8 years, have spent a lot of efforts to try to strengthen the enforcement, and that has very much contributed to the improvement of air and water quality in China. But as mentioned before, the slowing down of the economy in 2018, since 2018, and then the trade war and then the pandemic hit, have made many local regions calling for the relaxation of the environmental rulings. And so with that, we started seeing some regions, sometimes not enforce the rules as stringently as they did before. And this time, during the 2 sessions, during the MPC session, the environmental minister paid a special visit, without giving any alert, and just went down directly to Tangshan, and he discovered that, with the task force, that 4 major steel mills not just fail to restrict and limit their production with the orange alert. They actually, some of them try to increase their output, and some even breach the standards, and they also cook the books. They try to cheat their way out. So now, of course, they have been penalized this time. They have been detained. They're facing criminal charges. However, we need to recognize behind that there are also local government responsibilities, because what we have, the data we compiled showing that, at least 2 of them have actually given a grade A status, meaning that they have been certified by the local government as very good, responsible factories. But the records we compiled actually already showing that they should be the lowest grade. So I think we need to review the root causes and from now on continue to strengthen our enforcement.
Yeah, there needs to be more watchdog, agencies out there keeping an eye on those factories. Dr. Nathan, I understand that you will have to leave us soon. One final question to you. What do you think China and the United States can do as we look forward to their Alaska meeting between Chinese and American senior officials soon? What can the 2 countries do together to really address the issue of climate change?
Thank you. Well, I think one of the most important steps is, of course, the US rejoining the Paris Agreement. I think it's going to be absolutely critical for dialogue and for the 2 countries to be working together to address climate change, not just on reducing emissions, but also on supporting their own citizens, but also other countries to adapt to climate change. One of the things that we can really see with the sandstorm is that extreme weather events such as this are transboundary in nature, so they have impacts across geographical and political borders. So we need to be working in a transboundary way to address some of these challenges and build resilience and help other countries to do that. I mean, in the case of Inner Mongolia as well in the sandstorms, it's not just thinking about afforestation, but it's also about thinking about conservation and preservation of grasslands. These are important carbon sinks which help reduce, sequester the carbon, the CO2, but also critical for helping the prevention of soil erosion and so on. So on issues such as global challenges, I hope that both China and the US can put aside some of the existing sort of geopolitical tensions that might exist and work together to address that. And I think that's also thinking about how do we make supply chains sustainable, thinking about ensuring that our overseas investments are climate compatible, really both countries committing to a green recovery, as Madron said. Many local governments, not just in China, but around the world, are really having to battle with balancing economic recovery and safeguarding the environment. And we need to acknowledge that that is a challenge, and local governments, national governments need to be supported, not just through public financing to incentivize a green recovery, but also private financing. So how our private capital, how can that be better utilized? And I know there is a lot of work in the financial system to think about how do we ensure that investments in new big infrastructure projects, etc., are green.
A lot of stakeholders need to be engaged. Dr. Rebecca Nathan, thank you so much for your insight. Come back again. Dr. Majin, let me go back to you. 12 years ago, I listened to your speech about China's effort to address the issue of deforestation, desertification, more than a decade on. How would you rate China's effort to regreen its deserts?
Yeah, this is a really remarkable effort, and a lot of we need to give real credit to the green policies during the past 10 years, especially the past 5 years. And China first issued a logging ban, and then China stopped all this, try to return stop the hillside farming and try to return those farmland in the upper reach of Yangtze River and the lowest plateau in upper reach of the Yellow River, return them to forest, and then in the vast in the western part of China to try to reforest and grow back the grassland. So all this have yield good result. The reduced frequency of decline frequency of sandstorm is actually part of that. So we need to give a lot of credit for that, and just as Rebecca said, that more efforts needs to be done. We should try to prevent all this.
Exactly. Thank you, Director Ma. And now let me introduce Director Wu Changhua, Executive Director of Professional Association for China's Environment. Thank you, ma'am, for joining us. What do you make of China's sandstorm in Beijing across its northern provinces recently?
It's interesting timing in terms of a reflection of how nature works. When humanity has declared a war on nature, we pretty much clearing the land, deforest, and turn the land, dry land, into other purposes to serve the food as timbers and other products there. The consequences we have to bear today. I think that the other reflection is when we interrupt or damage the ecological integrity, and the nature will literally pay back in a way like a storm, like droughts, floods, and all the extreme weather events we've been experiencing. And on the other side, I think we've been talking about China's efforts, endeavors over the last 50 years in particular, trying to revegetation of forestation to bring back some of the ecological functions there, but somehow the impact has been seen but limited. And so the other factor, I think, is more than ever, it's not just one country's endeavor, and China has to figure out how to work more closely, at least at the regional level, with other countries like Mongolia, Central Asia, countries, as well as East Asian countries together, and trying to build back the nature. I think globally this year, there are two major tracks moving forward in terms of enhancing global environmental governance. One track is around the climate change. So we're going to have this COP26 later this year to pull more efforts together to combat the climate change issues. On the other hand, this COP15 around the Biodiversity Convention. And so the two have become major vehicles for global community to come together to address the issues, what we're talking about here today, because dust storm or desertification, mostly because climate change and human activities are there. So we do need global efforts to address them together in order to, to keep or maintain the ecological integrity to respond to the consequences we're experiencing today.
Yeah, Director Wu, you touched upon a lot of issues. Obviously, China is trying to, make its economy rebound going forward in 2021, but also at local levels, lots of provincial governors are under pressure to perform economically. How do you see all these dynamics playing out in the future?
Well, this is where I think a very strong government, national government, needs to step in, right? And we've already committed to, in China in particular, to cap the carbon emissions before 2030 and achieving carbon neutrality by mid-century, around before 2060. In the meantime, China is leading the efforts to recover or to protect biodiversity. And so with the goals and the targets set already, rules, policies, regulations need to be further enhanced and need to be delivered. And so local governments, governors, mayors, more than ever, take on this kind of responsibilities to enforce and deliver. So yes, on one side, we do need to grow the economy to create more jobs and the employment. But on the other hand, we have to figure out actually how to deliver that economic and social goals on the foundation of solid ecological integrity. So I think we know very, very clearly today. We know what to do. We know what we need. So at the bottom line is the enforcement issue that China definitely needs to enhance further.
Yeah, Director Wu, 40 seconds left. Bill Gates predicted that the pandemic would be the next big crisis. And guess what? He was right. And then now he predicts that climate change will be the next big crisis facing mankind. Do you share his sentiment?
Totally, absolutely. I don't think it will. I think it's already happening. And so we have these two pandemics together. On one side is the virus, and on the other side, actually, climate change is already happening. So it's not tomorrow, it's already today. We are living in it.
All right, we'll see what can be done. And in fact, a lot of needs to be done currently to address the issue of climate change and extreme weather patterns. Director Ma Jun, Director Wu, thank you both so very much for joining us and being part of this conversation. In this dialogue, thank you for watching. I'm Wang Guan in Beijing.